So, Josiah, how in your role and in your view of governance of the kind of business ecosystem in Scotland and beyond, how have you seen this idea of socially driven business change in the last couple of years?
I think it's really interesting looking at, if I can take the liberty of talking over about a period of 30 years, if that's allowed. I think Scotland, from the idea of the kind of purpose-led business and kind of doing purpose and trying to create impact through business, we have a long history of how that came about. So you look at places like New Lanark and some of the original co-ops that were ever in the world. Like New Lanark is a mill in Lanark. We're one of the very first co-ops ever made, all the way through to the kind of community business movement from the 1970s and 80s and into kind of the start of what eventually became the social enterprise ecosystem. That we kind of had this vein of kind of community and purpose-led business throughout our history. I think what's really interesting is looking particularly the last 10 years, how that movement has begun to inspire other businesses types, through family businesses and cooperatives, and definitely now into kind of particularly the startup ecosystem, around how that model and those principles that we've had in Scotland can be incorporated into the kind of the governance of new businesses going forward. Some markers for me over the past, probably say 4 years, are really looking at the Business Leaders Roundtable in America, where the kind of top businesses, top valued businesses in the States got together and for the first time said that stakeholders were as important as, and the environment were as important as shareholders in it. Whether they put that in practice is a different question, but this is a kind of principle for the purpose of a business. At the same time, you had people like Larry Fink from BlackRock, one of the largest investment firms, coming out and saying that profit and purpose are inextricably linked, starting to put kind of gauntlets down for all of the businesses that they work with to really begin to start thinking about that. And I think particularly look at the last 2 years and how we've gone through quite a disruptive period in business through COVID and also kind of around the world seeing people leave jobs that are not good for them, has really driven the kind of stakeholders to drive businesses to really consider what good governance means around social and environmental impact. And I think we're really starting to enter this phase now where momentum is at a place where if you're not really taking consideration of your social and environmental impact on your staff, your work, your customers, the environment, that you're not going to be trading very long. Customers are demand it, staff demand it, and that's kind of now an essential part of business. I think one of the big questions, though, we still have going forward is how do we demonstrate that? How do we differentiate between someone who's genuinely doing it versus someone who says they're doing it?
So you mentioned there in the last couple of years was the disruption, and certainly one of the things that was really palpable during the first lockdown was lots of really grassroots community projects popping up all over the shop. And these were not coming from Richard Branson, Bill Gates, Alan Sugar. These were local people that wanted to do something. And that energy, I feel, has transitioned post-pandemic, or however we want to phrase it now, with the Great Resignation, where, as you alluded to, people have had this purposeful awakening. They know they're here for a good time, not a long time, and they want to try and leave a positive legacy, whether that means continuing that project and trying to scale it as a social enterprise, or going down the kind of profit and purpose route to have a purpose-driven private business. How have you seen that manifest in terms of the market that you see, but also in the support that Firstport offers people these days?
I think it seems to be that there are a few challenges that are facing business as we move to this place. As I said, the kind of history of this has been primarily focused on certain types of businesses, often quite small businesses, often very community-led businesses, or with this kind of a geographical remit of what they're doing. And the real transition that businesses have been struggling with is, how do I measure that? How do I evidence that? I say I do this, I know I want to do this, I intrinsically know that the work I do has some sort of impact. But how do I understand that? How do I articulate that? How do I measure that? How do I make it key to my business? So that kind of, whether it's impact measurement or whatever phrase you want to use, that has been a difficulty for businesses moving forward. And the things that popped up, whether that's kind of B Corp or fair trade, or some of the ones that have been around for a while, is a lot in the food and drink sector, But how do we kind of navigate that bit? And then the other difficulty we've been seeing with a lot of businesses is how do I choose the correct model to do this? There are 1,001 legal structures out there, although there are some dominant ones that people use around company limited by shares or kicks for social enterprises. I think what's really been the challenge people have been navigating is how do I choose the right one? And I think one of the things and very important principles we have across the different things we do in the Firstport group is really trying to get people to first focus on what the problem is they're trying to achieve, then what is the right structure that helps you achieve that, and then what is the way to fund that structure. I think many people start in the reverse of that. They kind of get an idea what they want to do, where can I find money, and then build the structure towards that. And I think one of our things we really work with people to do is try to turn that journey to kind of how do we make the most impact first, and then how do we make that profitable on a good business.
So previously you've had lots and lots of support for social enterprises and the other types of structures across the third sector. But with this wave of social entrepreneurship, where people want to make money and be judged not just on their intention, but also their impact, how is Firstport now supporting both the social enterprises, but also the people that want to scale with a profit?
Partly I want to challenge the question a little bit, that I think there are assumptions around how different models are chosen, what you can and can't do with models. Speaking specifically about social enterprises, one of the challenges with the social enterprise structure has always been how those really ambitious companies are able to scale, because you don't have access to things like equity finance and stuff like that through that structure. But you have people who want to choose that model because of kind of ownership and wanting to have certain people as stakeholders key in the governance of it, and that kind of difficulty challenge there. So one of the things we've done in the Firstport group to kind of challenge that assumption that you can't scale that business is to build things like our Catalyst Fund that we built with Social Enterprise Scotland, where we've created a whole different revenue-based finance mechanism that does what equity does, but for companies that don't have access to that. And it's exploded. We've got 60 companies in the kind of pipeline for it right now. And we're trying to figure out how do we respond to that. But at the same time, the social enterprise model isn't right for certain companies and isn't the one to be there. I think it's important to say that. And I think people in that sector would agree with that. But I think as well, how you build those companies that are private companies with different types of shareholding, different types of ownership to build that governance and that protects it is very, very key. And I often look at one of the elements of the B Corp or the Benefit Corp model, where regardless of what legal structure you choose, because there's a variety you can have within that, you build that social and environmental impact into your governance documents. So your MEMs and ARCs have to then say, yes, I weigh up stakeholders and the environment alongside financial things when I make decisions. And for me, it all comes down to governance. No matter what structure you use, making sure that that impact and that purpose you're trying to have as a business is protected in your governance. And in the Firstport group, we've began, well, most of the work we do is at the stage where people haven't yet figured out what they want to be. And I'd say about 70% of who we work with historically has been in the kind of more social enterprise space. But what we've seen, particularly over the last 4.5, 5 years, is that other 30% are looking for ways of achieving what a social enterprise does and that impact of protecting it, but in a space that is more relevant to what their business is trying to do. And I think that's where we start looking at cooperatives and private companies of things like golden shares, where shares are given to a particular social issue or environmental issue. Or even things like B Corps. And I think our role in providing the Secretariat for the Scotland Can Be program is really about helping encourage that piece of work to help all the business advisors across Scotland incorporate that impact into it and really understand that, as I said earlier, that profit and purpose are linked and that not having one right really disrupts a business as it moves forward.
So what do you think that the startups that are coming through now, and the startups that we have in our audience at Startup Ground Scotland, some of them might want to go down that third sector route, some of them might want to go into private sector, some of them are thinking about social governance and B Corp and how that can impact their culture and their hiring from day one. what is their kind of gateway into that support with Firstport? There's lots of different routes to start a business and to get that advice, but what do you feel helps to differentiate Firstport in that regard from that day one support?
I think because we offer a lot of pre-founding support, I think that's probably one of the key things to help people work out their issue. But I think also what's really important is where we partner with other existing ecosystem partners. I think that's a key thing for us, is we really don't want to reinvent how to support new businesses. We want all businesses that are being supported to be supported in a way where impact and purpose is there. So we've got partnerships with people like Converge, where we're in there. Our head of investment just did a really interesting series about alternative ways to finance your startup. And Colin, one of our business advisors, is doing work with them on how you embed it before you build your legal structures. And as well, the work we did historically with Scottish Enterprise Business Advisors, trying to get them to understand how these mechanisms work in practice. And I think if you're interested in this, come and knock on your door, and there's someone to talk it out with you before you even found stuff. And we even have funding to help support people founding stuff. But also, if there's something that's more relevant to this age and stage or sector of your business, we're likely already working with them to help build us into what they do and give you a foot right into that.
So there's a lot of Scottish startups that are going through the B impact measurement process and becoming B Corps at the moment. But you also see large organizations trying to almost reverse engineer this idea of people and impact in society and environmental issues into their businesses. How in your role and with the work that you do with Scotland Can Be, how can we ensure that that B Corp status stays special and that the good parts of it can transition to large corporate business to make the world and society a bit more of a better place?
Yeah, I think there's, it kind of goes back to what I was saying in a different question about the idea of how you demonstrate what you're doing to the public in practice. And regardless of what business does, what it does, you're seeing companies all over, from Shell, down IKEA, down to kind of early stage startups, as you mentioned, who are all talking about this now. This is the language that we speak. This is what investment firms are talking about, and everything. So really trying to understand what that means is very difficult, not just for the business, but for the consumer more so. And you have weird things like a lot of investment funds that are CSR investment funds or green investment funds are talking about now doing arms because it's helping in Ukraine. And big questions get answered around how people feel, if that's CSR or ESG or whatever. For me, really being transparent, so not just saying I do something and I measure internally, and this is what my own internal measurement does, that's often greeted with skepticism. Rightly so. I think transparency and sharing, having external measurement to make sure you have it there, is key in all of this. And I think one of the things I really like about B Corp as a concept, and B Corp can any business that's a profitable business, or a business that seeks profit, whether it's a social enterprise or a private company, can become a B Corp. But the B Corp process is difficult, because it digs into your governance. It looks at your governance, it looks at your people, it looks at your environmental footprint, it looks at your customers. How do you actually make impact on all those pieces before it gives you that thing? And I think what the difference with that is it digs into what you do and why you do it and how you protect why you do it. And that question about how you protect why you do it is probably where most businesses fail on this. And I think the more people we can have being super transparent about what they do and evidencing it, will fight against those who just say they do it and don't have any kind of public transparency piece. And so if that's B Corp is right for you, that's right. By saying there are other sector-based ones as well within that, whether that's like Demeter and biodynamic or organic or things like that. Those are all things where someone else comes in and checks and makes sure you're actually doing what you say you do.
What would you say to somebody who's thinking about starting a business or leaving their job because they feel this like social purposeful pull? What would you say to them in terms of getting over that imposter syndrome and that maybe that worry of being able to scale and to hit the market?
Well, it's hard. And I would say that everybody felt that way at one point and probably still does. I mean, I feel that way sometimes. I have this week. Imposter syndrome for anybody is difficult. And I think particularly in the kind of impactful space, why me? There are people who come into this with lived experience and whatever issue that is they're facing. There are people who have that secondhand through family members or something like that. And people who just see a problem that they're trying to solve out in the world. And I would say most people who struggle with that, it's why should do I have the right to do it? And I think almost that permission, like they're looking for someone to give them permission to do it. So here, you have permission to do it. You're just looking for permission. I'll give you permission. But I think getting there and start, and whether you fail, a lot of people will fail, but I think failing is a part of a journey, and it's about failing well. So the next time you can do it. I think if you have that spirit and you see something and you have a solution, I would encourage people to explore how to do that and find the people around you that can help you explore that and tell you if you're wrong or if you have something there.
So thanks so much for your time, Josiah. Speaking on behalf of Startup Ground Scotland, we're very excited about this partnership and to get the information and support around social business and what Firstport can do to strap a rocket to these purposeful entrepreneurs, whether it be in the third sector or the private sector, through catalyst funding, the advice, the amazing programs that you guys support, and also further down the line with your relationship with Scotland Can Be in terms of really getting that accreditation right and that governance. So thank you so much for your time today, and follow all of our social media, our newsletters to find out exactly how Firstport can help you achieve that social dream for your business. Thanks.